In this lesson, we're looking more at pathogenic organisms. We're specifically looking at protists and parasites because we've covered bacteria and fungi in another lesson. Right, starting with protists, they are a really large group of unicellular eukaryotic organisms, and of the 65,000 known species, they're really, really diverse. Only about 24 of them have been known to cause disease in humans. So, you know, it doesn't sound bad, but because they're highly specialized, the species that actually do infect humans infect hundreds of millions of people a year, and it's quite serious. So we're talking things like Giardia, which can give severe diarrheal illness, Cryptosporidium and Plasmodium, which causes malaria. So very, very endemic across the world. Now, protists are transmitted using vectors, and a vector is another organism that is basically used to deliver that species into humans. And in terms of, say, malaria, the Plasmodium species uses this Anopheles mosquito to do that job. It can also be happening, you know, you can also be picking up protists through contaminated water, and interestingly, they have this really complex lifestyle that allows them to have multiple organism hosts throughout their time. So you might pick it up from a mosquito, but then it's going to live in you, but it has previously lived in that mosquito. So it can live in various organs in there and go through quite a lot of little changes in its life cycle. In terms of virulence factors, again, these particular organisms have adherence factors to enter those host cells, specifically, say, Plasmodium, which is the malaria protist. And they can also evade host immune responses really, really well. What they can do is produce a variant of a cell surface protein. And so once it's actually in the cell and those cell surface proteins are there, it's not actually recognized by our immune system as some kind of foreign invader. So it's like, hey, nothing to see here, move on, don't consume me, everything's fine. Now, some of these also can have capsules similar to bacteria. So the capsule in Trypanosoma brucei, which causes African sleeping sickness, it can lead to evading that immune response once again. And they're beautiful when they are shown inside a blood film, but terrifying. So particularly Plasmodium, which is that case study here in terms of malaria, all these different kinds of species here are going to cause malaria. The Vivax one is the most common one, but Falciparum is probably the most deadly. And during some kind of blood meal, a malaria-infected female Anopheles mosquito is going to inoculate into the human host. So it's going to put those sporozoites into the human, and in human those parasites start to grow and multiply in the liver first and foremost, down here, and then they will be pushed into the red blood cells. And they will actually bury into the red blood cells. They grow inside that cell and they start to release their daughter parasites that continue to invade other red cells. So it just continues on and on. Now, malaria can cause fevers, headaches, chills, and can be very, very fatal in a number of instances. So there are a huge number of countries that are afflicted because of the climate, and if their climate allows for that Anopheles mosquito to be breeding, it might be very, very warm and tropical, it might have lots of stagnant water around it in swamps and areas like that, it's going to allow that vector organism, in this case the mosquito, to continue to breed and therefore continue to spread the disease. So the Anopheles mosquito is picking up that parasite, it's then spreading it into humans. So all the humans that are living in this area need to take some kind of precaution to avoid being bitten by those mosquitoes. And it might simply be mosquito netting over the bedding. It might be, there's been previously some kind of chemical that has been put out to try and kill off these mosquitoes and things like that. So lots of different examples here. We've talked a lot about malaria. It is a pretty important one, but African sleeping sickness, Giardia, you might have heard of Giardia, leishmaniasis, and dysentery caused by tiny little amoebas. Lots of contaminated water situations here and lots of vector transmission going on. All right, parasites are particularly unpleasant. They benefit at the expense of a host organism. So they're going to derive nutrients from their host and essentially deprive their host of nutrients to the point of causing serious diseases. Now, many parasites are worms, and they often have really complex life cycles again, and we're talking internal or external here. Most species are worms or some kind of insect. And they live in the intestines usually, where nutrients are really easily accessible. Parasites, in terms of their transmission, we're talking a lot of contaminated water and food, and the host organisms, can be multiple because of that complex life cycle that we saw, say, in protists. You can pick them up through direct contact, so you can actually be just eating something straight away, or you can have your hands wiped on a disgusting surface and intake them into your body before you realize. But we can be talking about ticks, fleas, lice in animals that, again, they're just picking them up based on direct contact. Virulence factors are really interesting here. They're slightly less subtle because ectoparasites can actually just bite you, and then they can secrete these kinds of enzymes that allow them to enter your tissues. Very, very simple. And the host immune system is, trying to weed them out, but not doing a great job of it because some of them have really tough outer cuticles and they hide from those immune cells, which isn't great for us, but is really, really quite clever for them. There are situations where some of these can produce this really tough outer, I guess it's a shell almost, and they can hide in amongst even muscle tissue and things like so, where our immune system's not really looking. In this situation, these are, quite large ones that you would expect to visually see macroscopically, and you would see them in multiple kinds of organisms that we're used to. But these ones probably less so, and we're talking contaminated food and actually picking things up directly on your hands. So we've covered these in a previous video, we've covered these. They're a bit more obscure, but when we start to think about them, they are a lot more familiar than we think they are.